This is the captain. We have a little problem with our entry sequence, so we may experience some slight turbulence and then explode. And this week we cover 2005's Serenity, a film that was made to continue the story of Firefly from 2002, a TV show that was given no
opportunity,
no
chance.
It was given no chance by the studio. It was released in non-sequential order by the studio and then cancelled after a couple of episodes. How
many episodes were there? Was it like 8 or something?
They released like 8 episodes of the 13 order or something like that before.
It's unbelievable
because I believe they started with the train job first.
The fact that they released it out of order is absolutely baffling. Then obviously there was the time slot. I mean, you talk about it with movies and stuff, especially nowadays, that movies were, are released to die, in a certain window. And it's such a shame with the timing, because you think nowadays, if Firefly was released, it'd be given the time. Like if this was on Netflix, you just plonk it on Netflix and word of mouth would do the job. But obviously back in 2002, it had to have a time slot. And the fact of the matter is it wasn't getting the numbers because, as you say, it was released out of order.
Yeah.
It wasn't getting any push from the company. Most people didn't know it was on. It's like, this Western kind of sci-fi thing with Joss Whedon. I don't know about that. And then it just disappears.
For the studio to have no faith in it whatsoever. And it's garnered one of the biggest cult followings ever. I mean, the fans are called brown coats of this. So after the uproar of the cancellation, Joss Whedon, and we will get to Joss Whedon, but Joss Whedon was given the go-ahead to film this as a sequel. And what Joss Whedon has said is that a lot of the things that were approached in the film Serenity were actually what was going to be in season 2. So
Well, it's one of the most bizarre.
They were going to make Miranda a bigger story, the Reavers a bigger story, things like that. What I do want to start off with off the bat is we do understand Joss Whedon has come out to be a bit of a naughty man.
He's just a dick.
He is a dick. What we're gonna do is we're gonna separate the film from the man. So this is not going to be the Joss Whedon is a dick podcast. This is just going to be about Serenity. So we're not going to go into too much of it.
Oh, 100%. No, that's another way. We've only got so much time on this, and I want to talk about the movie. I mean, I'm not going to let Joss Whedon, and I know it's different with different people. That's absolutely fine. But I have no interest in Joss Whedon. And let's be clear, from what I've heard, he's just a dick. Like, this isn't as egregious as some other things you hear out there. Yeah. It's like he's just a dick. And it's like the fact that he's a dick isn't going to ruin Serenity for me. It's not going to ruin Firefly. It's not going to ruin the Avengers. It's like I find it so easy to separate him from the work. It's no problem at all. So, when we're talking about this, we're fully aware Joss Whedon's a bit of a prick, but we're not going to talk. We just don't care. Like, not we don't care. Maybe that's the wrong term. But we want to. We're here to celebrate a film that we both love. Yeah. Spoiler alert. Yeah, we both love this film.
We're not going to let him ruin Serenity because
no way.
I mean, come on, our mutual man crush for Nathan Fillion.
Oh, yeah. And it goes back to Two Girls, a Guy, and a Pizza Place, like back in the day. But it really was Firefly
Was that the porno?
It sounds a bit like a porno,
you said Two Girls and a Guy. That's the actual porno parody, is it? From Two Guys and a Girl.
Oh, is it really? Oh, maybe it is. Jesus Christ. Well, if Nathan Fillion's in it, perhaps. But no, I mean, I remember him from that show. But it very much was Firefly and then subsequently Serenity. And it is when you go back and watch this, and I appreciate that, he's hugely popular with the geek crowd, and obviously he's had a very successful career in his own right with, a bunch of hugely successful shows down the line. And now, if anything, he's starting to get that kind of bigger rub in, movies. Obviously, he was in the Suicide Squad, etc. recently. But I go back to watch this film in 2000, released in 2005. And Nathan Fillion is so good as Mal Reynolds. He is so fucking good. I'm like, why wasn't he immediately made a megastar after this was made? It's like, I find it literally, often mind-boggling. I think he's that good. And of course, a big part of that is the writing, is the character. But it's Nathan Fillion who ultimately brings it to life. It's
the delivery, because I love the dark sarcasm from him. Everything's a joke until it's not a joke. I mean, the opening bank job, where they steal from the outpost. And he's having that conversation, and he's going with the guard down in the vault, and he's like, look, if I shoot you in a graze, they're going to know you gave up. I'll shoot you. And he's having this nice, warm conversation about why he's going to shoot him, because he wants him to be a hero. Then he hears Reavers, and it's like a switch in his head. Does that vault close from the inside? Yes. You get everyone in here, and you do not open it till if you've got air, do not open it. And it's like, do it now. And he's just like, he just becomes
he does that
else. He can turn on a switch. It's so
he does
good.
that throughout the film, and I think a part of that obviously is the script, but his ability to convey so many emotions. And again, considering that this film is ostensibly, it's a follow-up, it's a bit of a reboot, and for the majority of people seeing it, it would have been a totally new thing. I think it's an absolute miracle it works. But they do so much of the kind of heavy lifting with just subtle dialogue options, and so much of it is dealt with by the performances. And a big part of that is Nathan Fillion. Like, there's no flashbacks to his time in the war. It's all dealt with, as you say, those kind of dialogue moments. And so much of it is the fact that he has that kind of ability to kind of ramp it up in a moment's notice. Like, he's the lovable scoundrel, that kind of classic Han Solo mold, but he's the other side of Han Solo, which you don't see in Star Wars. Like, he really is nasty when he needs to be. And the great thing about his character is that you can see almost immediately that he has regret in those moments. Like, when he has to be that character, the bad guy, there's always that line, it's like, let's be bad guys. And it's a throwaway moment. But sometimes in the film, he legitimately has to be a bad guy. And you can see in his performance, like, he doesn't want to do it, but he knows, because he's got these responsibilities, and obviously he knows who they're up against. Like, that sometimes he has to be a legitimately nasty man. And I think one of the great sequences is early in the film, and it's just it's one line repeated, but when they're about to do the job, and she says, do you know what you're doing? He's like, this is what I do, darling. And then it just stops. He's like, he repeats it, and he just kind of looks off wistfully. He's like, this is what I do. But in that moment, the amount of emotion that he conveys, like the fear, the doubt, the fact that it's like, man, am I doing the right thing? Can I get away with this? I just think it, as I said, a fantastic performance from start to finish. And so charming, of course.
Look at his delivery as well. Just before they turn Serenity, the ship, into Arriva's decoy, where he's telling everybody what job he wants to do because he wants to go to Miranda, and they're all speaking in unison at him, saying different things, and he just pulls his gun out, like because he can see the guy behind coming out. So his gun is not a threat to them, but they think it's a threat to them as he pulls his gun out. And he shoots the guy, and it's like, this is what we're going to do. I will do what I got to do to protect mine. And just the darkness he's conveying and the seriousness he's conveying, which is a complete turn of phrase from previous lines. I mean, some of his lines are fantastic, like, faster, faster, must go faster. Do you want to be captain? Yeah, I do. Well, you can't. And, like, do you know that girl? I really don't. Like, all these, like, but they all deliver you get just brief glimpses at the character of Mal. Like, to him, and he's already said it, Serenity is his home. Everyone else is just a guest in his house. So when this is my home, you all are guests on it. Like, and he will do whatever he does to whatever he can do just to save his house, his home. And I think if you take away the grandiose of it all being in space and everything like that, it's basically a man fighting for his piece of land, basically. Serenity is his piece of land. He will do whatever he can, go up against whoever he can or whoever he needs to keep just that small parcel of his.
And I think so much
is really good.
Yeah, and so much of what he does is his performance is kind of dictated, obviously, by the character's history with the Alliance and the war with the unification war with the Independents. And you've got to remember, again, that a lot of people come into this film, they don't know anything about that. Like, that's all from the series. And again, they just kind of hint at that in the film. And I think I appreciate that there's the issue where it's like, I can't watch this film without knowing everything else that comes with it because I've seen the show. I like to think that for the most part it works as a standalone film, and again, without that could have become very heavy-handed with all these flashbacks, but they don't have that. And as you say, it kind of dictates his character in many regards, because I think the person, the quick-witted, cheerful, I think that is the true Mal Reynolds. But I love that scene, and we'll get to who Chiwetel Ejiofor, who I think is equally fantastic in this film.
He's great in this.
One of my favorite scenes is that obviously they have a few run-ins, but I think it's the one just when things, obviously Shepard has just died, which I think is an amazingly emotional scene. Again, for, considering the limited screen time, it's like, oh God, I forgot what he says.
Believe in something, Mal. Wherever it is, believe in something.
Yeah. I mean, and a lot of that stuff is potentially quite cheesy, but they pull it off in this film. But he's at his lowest ebb, and they go in, and it's just a video call. But it's like Chiwetel Ejiofor in that moment pushes Mal into like what I would consider to be war mode, and that's when he becomes cold and hard and unwavering in that moment. And again, I don't think he wants to be, but he's just like, this is who we're dealing with, and if we're going to survive this, I can't have questions from like, I need to just say, okay, this is what we're fucking doing. And that, you know, like you said, I don't think he wants to scare the shit out of his crew. He loves his crew quite clearly, but he's like, I know this is a war moment now, and I need to go into this moment.
Because that scene as well, Chiwetel Ejiofor, and we are going to butcher his name. I do apologize for that. He has no aspirations of who he is. It's that scene where Mal goes, "I don't murder kids," and he just turns around. The operative turns around and goes, I do. Like, and he's so everything's so soft spoken. That first meeting that they have, and you already alluded to Mal being like Han Solo, the shoot first kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, that's clearly a nod to Star Wars when he does just shoot first.
And I do love it when they're having their fight. Then he's like, "Well, I am, of course, wearing full body armor. I am not a fool." But
yeah, I mean, he shoots first twice. With Chiwetel Ejiofor, like twice in the film, they really do lay that on thick. Early doors, he just shoots him before he has any chance to do anything, and then later in the film, when they have their climatic battle, he does the same thing, but he shoots first like 5 times.
But again, going back, you have that battle, like the final battle between them as well. And he's like, "Are you prepared to die for this?" And he goes, "If I have to." And then he shoots him, and he's going, "Well, that's not, of course, that's not exactly Plan A." Do you know? He's still yeah. As all this stuff is going through, he knows the seriousness of the seriousness of everything that's going on, but he can't not just throw a quip out there, and it's delivered so well.
I think that's his primary character, and I think Chiwetel Ejiofor, this was the first thing I had actually seen him in, and I remember back in 2005 when I saw it in the cinema, I was like, this guy is unbelievable, and he has that great introduction, as you say, like he's the complete antithesis to Mal Reynolds. Like he's cold, calculated, but all the time. There's no emotion there. There's no love for the people around. Like it's what he could be, but with all the love removed, kind of thing.
It's his love for the idea of a better world that he's not allowed to live in. Now that's
well, that comes around later on. I think that's a great line. Like, you know, when he has that admittance, and that again, that is one of the great scenes. Like, no, this world isn't for me. You know, I'm a monster. As you said, it's like, I kill kids. I'm a monster, but he's so self-aware, which I think is brilliant. It's like, but I believe in this so much. And, you know, you get that from the very opening sequence. He's never well, he does become flustered eventually. That's the whole point. Mal Reynolds is the one person who can fluster anyone. But you can see it. He's oddly charming, but he's so indoctrinated. He's so committed to the cause. And, you know, as you say, like from the very opening sequence, like, oh no, he's the true believer in what the Alliance are trying to achieve. And as you say, that great line, it's like, we are making a better world. But the death, the way he takes out that dude, and I love the opening sequence back to front. I think they're actually a little bit heavy-handed with the lighting in that opening sequence when they go in and save
River.
Gotta get a River. I always get her actual name mixed up with a character, because Summer Glau sounds like a made-up name as well. Yeah. But I love the way that they have the opening shot of the rescue, and then you realize you're basically watching a recording. But the way he kills that guy, where, you know, he hits his nervous system and then just plants the samurai, like what looks like a samurai sword on the floor, and just the way he looks at him, because this is a good death. I'm like, oh, that's some cold shit, man.
It's the fact that he knows what's coming, but he's still talking to the secretary. Young miss, I need you to go to work now. And like, he stops talking to her for a minute to turn around, as you've already said, to turn around to him and go, "This is a good death. Young miss, we have to go to work." Like, it's so good. Like,
again,
he is so good. And like you said, he is the complete opposite of Mal Reynolds. It's delivered perfectly by Chiwetel Ejiofor. He is just his ideals, his beliefs, but also like just the way he talks to people. Like, everything is just so soft spoken. And even when he can turn on a switch and just become a monster. He's not a monster who's angry. Like you said, everything is just done calm and collected, and that's the kind of guy you should be scared of.
Oh, absolutely. And again, I don't want to necessarily jump to the end, But I love his turnaround, as it were, at the end. The fact that Mal, in what is a really pretty brutal fight scene at the end, when he eventually makes him watch the tape and he realizes, he's just been so unwilling to listen. Like you say, he's so indoctrinated. He's so he almost has to believe, because his whole life has been about fighting for the Alliance's cause. And he knows he's done these truly horrendous things. But in his mind, it's like, oh, I can justify my actions because I'm doing it for the right thing. I'm doing it for a good cause, so these people can live better lives. And again, we are creating better worlds. And when he's forced to watch the tape at the end of what the Alliance have actually been doing and how it breaks him in that moment, and suddenly you do get that emotion. I think that's absolutely fantastic. But Jesus, I was shocked rewatching this, how brutal that last fight scene, where he stabs him in the hand with a screwdriver, then he elbows him in the throat. And then again, you want to know the difference between Han Solo and Mal Reynolds in that moment when he breaks his neck and just plunks him against the side and makes him watch the video and saying, oh, this is why. I was like, did he always break his neck? Or I completely forgot that he was so, again, that nasty side of him. In the moment, he will do whatever it takes to win, because ultimately what he is first and foremost is a soldier. Yeah. But yeah, I was a little concerned going back to this because I haven't watched it for 6 or 7 years. To my mind, this was one of my favorite sci-fi films of the last 20 years. And that isn't driven purely by my love of Firefly. I'm not a brown coat. As much as I love this film, I'm not super nerd fan. I do love it. And
if they ever brought a sequel out, I would have loved it. But it's not like that I was then signing the petitions. Like that, no. Yeah. No, I'm not. I haven't got my house adorned with Serenity and Firefly stuff. It's just a film and a TV show that I love, and I was more than willing to approach this critically. And I was again really watching it from the perspective of somebody. I was trying to see it from somebody who hadn't seen the show. I was like, does this work? Because first and foremost, you have to see this as just a movie. Obviously, it's hard for us to remove ourselves from the TV show. But I was like, does this just work as a movie? And I was like, for the most part, it's unbelievable that it does. Yeah. The fact that it could have been so clumsy, this film, with flashbacks and over-explaining things. I mean, other than a few of the characters maybe getting slightly short shrift, and I think the two who stood out for me are actually Inara and Wash, who maybe don't get the screen time that perhaps they deserve. But other than that, the fact that they establish the Alliance, they establish, obviously, the independence, they establish the history, they make the Reavers one of the scariest villains in movie history. They are so horrendous. They were always kind of bad in the show, but here in the film, they feel like they're immediately turned up to 11. In the show, they're only hinted at. And you only see the ship. You never actually see the Reavers. So the fact that they brought them in and they are just monsters. When they kidnap that guy... Sorry. When they kidnap that guy who Mal shoves off the mule...
Oh, from Dennis from Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Yeah. And I never knew that was Dennis from Always Sunny. Unbelievable.
And then when Mal shoots him, they drop him because they wanted him alive to eat him. Just how bad they are. But what you said,
they do really a great. It's a great thing. Obviously, you do see them a bit more in this, but a lot of it is that Spielberg style of storytelling, where it's so much of your fear for the Reavers is established by not by necessarily what they do, but by the reactions of others. As you say, that great scene down in the bank vault where Mal immediately turns it's a kind of oh, this is a fun little Western. We're robbing an outpost, and as you say, it's all lighthearted. But as soon as River mentions Reavers, the panic in everyone, these guys who are so cool, so kind of professional at their business, but that sense of panic, and all of a sudden it's just listen, if you want to survive, you need to get down here. We need to get out of here immediately. And obviously they do reference it by saying, the fact that they eat and rape and kill, and obviously not necessarily in a consistent order. And I was just like, man, to my mind, what they actually reminded me of was the Borg. Because the Borg, other than in a few of the movies in Star Trek, there's not a huge amount, certainly in the early days, I suppose, there wasn't a great deal of characterization, but it was just this fear of being kind of incorporated into the Borg, just this kind of bogeyman in space. And that's what they felt like. And again, the fact that in this movie, they established that sense of fear and that sense of threat so early is just down to great writing, I think.
Yeah. You said as well, right? You said about watching this film without any knowledge of the TV show. And the introduction of the characters is done great in that one shot that goes throughout the ship. Just they start off in the cockpit. You got Wash and Mal talking
at the start of the film, yeah,
yeah, and then the camera just follows Mal as it goes down several levels of the ship. You get the introduction to each character, just a quick introduction to them. But you don't have to have watched Firefly to then understand what's going on within this. And it's just done so well because you get all the explanation. It's like, you're not taking my sister, she's 17. And then it's the thing of, okay, but we took you on because you escaped the Alliance. We already know you escaped the Alliance because we had the beginning with the operative. So you don't need to have watched the show to know what was going on with that. Then the explanation of she's a reader. So again, you don't need to know the show to know that, because you only get that in the last episode then, where she's up against a bounty hunter that you know she can read minds and stuff. Yeah. Or feel people's feelings, whatever she is in the show. And it's done so, and I know there's a cut. There's only one cut during that shot. But it's fantastic as the camera trails down and you got all the...
Oh, 100%.
The interaction between them as well, like between Wash and between Mal. Whereas, was that the primary buffer panel? That was the primary buffer. Did the primary buffer panel just come off my ship? I believe it did. Like, just as they're going. Yeah. And then as she goes down, you get Zoe then. Are we going to crash? And it's like, well, talk to your husband. And then Jane, I don't want to explode. How many guns are you taking? It's it's everything with it is fantastic. It's so good.
What it reminded me of, in the same, and obviously it's dialogue driven rather than action driven, was one of my favorite sequences from the original Avengers film, and I still think to this day perhaps my favorite Marvel film.
What, the one with Sean
was that? Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, was that famous shot when they go between, when they're all fighting in the city, and it's basically looks like one shot, and it cuts up, and it's like you see Iron Man, and then you see the Hulk, and
the camera pans around them in a circle.
And again, it's almost easy to kind of take that as quite blasé now, because obviously we've had a bajillion and one Marvel films, but back then, to see them all up on the screen at the same time and in this action sequence, like he knew was like, I want to establish all these characters and establish what they can do in a fight. And he all does it without word, and he does it, so succinctly. And so, it feels, I'm sure it wasn't effortlessly, but it feels effortlessly. And this opening sequence reminded me of that scene, but in the dialogue version. And it's so easy to underestimate just how much heavy lifting is done with that opening shot. Obviously, it's shot beautifully, and as you say, it almost looks like a one shot, sorry. But how much of the character and the relationships that they establish in that, what is it, like a 3-4 minute spell? Yeah. Like you say, everyone on the ship, all of their names, all of their relationships. And I'm not saying like back to front, but you totally, within 5 minutes of this film, you're getting introduced to like 8-9 different characters, and you've got a feel for just about every single one of them, certainly in terms of their relationships between them and Mal. It's an absolutely masterful shot. And it actually starts, I think, with the very opening shot. Well, obviously, other than once you've had the rescue sequence, and then they cut to the Serenity sign on the sign of the ship, and I think the score by what's his name, David Newman, again does a huge amount of heavy lifting in terms of establishing tone, because it's this really soft, almost kind of orchestral soundtrack, and it's like, oh, look at the beauty, the majesty of space and of the ship, and then suddenly cuts into that kind of Western style soundtrack.
That's what's so good about it as well, because you've got the score. But because it's in space, what Serenity delivers so well is the fact that there is no sound in space. So every time you have any exterior space shots, there's no sound. There's no engine noises.
There's a bit. They do that cheap thing, don't they, where you kind of, it's almost like, even though we're outside and we're watching it externally, I think the audio that they use, rather than it being perfectly silent, it's almost like you're hearing the audio as you would hear if you were inside the ship, which I think is really clever, because everything is muffled. So when the ship, it's all silent, but when the ship suddenly blasts off, you do hear a muffled sound. And I think, I like to think that they're like, okay, well, this is what you'd hear if you were inside the ship. And I think it adds a gravitas to, like, as you say, that sense of space, but without it just being silent. Yeah. And you get it in like...
I was trying to say, you was on about the soundtrack. You had you had silence, you had the Serenity.
Oh, I see.
Just had the soundtrack. Let me finish, Liam.
Oh, I thought you meant, sorry, because it was one of those things I was thinking about, that whole idea of, obviously Star Wars cheats.
Yeah.
You can hear everything in space.
Yeah.
You can totally hear people screaming in space in Star Wars.
I was on about the intro. When you first see Serenity, you get it on the side, apologies. As you've said, it closer, and you just, because you were talking about the soundtrack, and you have nothing else. It's completely silent except for the soundtrack. I think it's done so well. I think it looks so good.
And I'm not sure if it was by accident or by design, but the soundtrack then, again, what we think of as being a more kind of Western-infused element of the soundtrack, doesn't kick in space. It kicks in as they're coming in through the atmosphere.
Yeah.
And again, that could just be a happy accident, but I think it's a fantastic opening sequence. As you said, it leads straight into that brilliant, potentially one shot when they introduce all the characters. But
one thing,
again, it comes back to the idea that whenever you think about Joss Whedon, man, like when he's on form, god damn, he can write a script, and shit, he can write dialogue, because again, kind of like Buffy and stuff, even Serenity, it inches towards cheesiness sometimes. But because the characters are delivering it with such kind of commitment, they nearly always get away with it. And because, of course, they're so likable, you pull it off. In lesser hands, this could have really been an absolute shitstorm. But instead, it's one of the greatest sci-fi films of the last 20 years.
The one thing that they don't rely on as much as they did in the TV show, because there wasn't much explanation, was the half Chinese, half English dialogue. Because the Alliance were from Western and well, it was half Chinese and half America, wasn't there, in the TV show? And they formed the Alliance, so that's... And you do get a bit
Wasn't
of...
Wasn't that the Independence? Or
no,
the Alliance. Oh, sorry. My apologies.
Yeah. And that's what I'm saying. So, but because they don't explain who the Alliance are, really, the Alliance are literally just... Well, I guess in regards to Star Wars, they're just the Emperor, aren't they? You don't really see them, you don't know them. It's just this looming thing in the background, and they've sent their operative.
Yeah.
But so
not quite as evil. They're not dressed like Nazis, but yeah.
And there's no explanation of why half of the population speaks Chinese or anything. So you do get some, especially when Mal's angry. Like when Mal gets punched, he starts speaking Chinese.
Chinese, yeah.
But you don't get a lot of that like you did in the show. Like you had a lot more of that Chinese dialogue in the show. So, I mean, that's the one thing that probably would have needed a bit more of an explanation if people were just watching. But again, because it's set in 400 or 4,000, however long in the future it's set, again, you're not really going to need it because, all right, this is the future, so maybe they just speak Chinese. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, that is the thing.
Yeah.
You have to let go, and I think it's one of the great things about the film in particular is that it knows how to pick its battles. It knows it's got 2 hours. It knows that it's like, well, we've already got the fans of the show, and of course you've got to appease them to a certain extent. But let's be clear, they're like, listen, we want to make this work. Obviously we know sadly that it didn't have a massive, it didn't do huge numbers in the box office, and this ultimately was the end of the show as we know it. But at the time, I have no doubt that like if this works, we could have another movie potentially.
There was ideas for a sequel, wasn't there?
Oh, yeah, I have no doubt that they would have potentially gone on to make a sequel.
He chose not to do it for Avengers.
Well, I mean, the thing is, it's hard to say no to the Avengers, isn't it? And I'm sure it would have been a tough sell to get this off the ground again as a movie. And, it is a shame that we never got to see another movie. But at the same time, I almost don't want to be greedy because in any other world, this show comes out, it doesn't get the support it deserves. It dies to death on TV, and that's the last we hear of it. The fact that they were even able to make a movie as a follow-up to a failed TV show is unbelievable. The fact that it works as well as it does. Like, I didn't come out of this like thinking, oh, I was greedy for more. I was legitimately, in 2005, I was like, I cannot believe they've made a film. I cannot believe it's as good as it was. The only thing I remember thinking was like, oh my God, Nathan Fillion's going to be like a superstar for the next 10 years. And it just never quite happened. But
did you notice, speaking of Nathan Fillion, did you notice when Anara called him to warn him of the trap, the scars on his body, they're actually all scarred. There's 4 scars on there. And they're all obtained from Firefly.
Oh, yeah. That's pretty awesome.
So there's the stab wound he retained when he did the duel with that Duke guy. There's like a couple of guns, because he had a gunshot in the pilot episode. He was betrayed. So, and like there's 4 scars and they're all from the TV. And I thought that was a really good little nod to the TV show. And
they do a great job of kind of... Sorry.
I did feel the introduction of Anara was a little bit lackluster because they kind of I don't think they wanted to go too much into the fact that she was a courtesan.
You definitely don't get that vibe. No. For the most part, I think again, trying to watch it with kind of fresh eyes, I was like, if you're watching this, you're like, wait, what does she do? Why is she dressed like that? And what is like, I mean, I think they do a good job of establishing that they've obviously got this complex past. And I think it's actually one of the most low-key romantic insults ever, where he comes out and he's like, you fog me up, you spin me about. It's like he's criticizing her, but basically he's telling us like, I can't stop thinking about you. And again, usually you have that extra line, but they don't have it in this. It's just him insulting her. But in that insult, there's so much love and there's so much clear kind of like, oh, well, I'm obviously madly in love with you and you mess up my life. I'm trying to have this nice, simple life. And every time you step into it, I can't think straight, essentially. But I think I mentioned earlier on the podcast that I thought those were the two, like if you're going to be hypercritical of this film, and I would need to be hypercritical because, as I said, I think it does nearly everything right, is Anara. I don't think it's essentially clear what she does or how she belongs on the ship. And you can make... The other issue is Wash, basically. I don't think they do a great job of selling Wash's and what's the name? Zoe's relationship. Yeah. And I actually think it's weird because everybody obviously remembers what happens to Wash because, they love him from the show. But I think if you're watching this for the first time and he dies, I don't think it has much of an impact. Sure. Because, he has that whole I'm a leaf on the wind thing. You're like, well, that's a bit cheesy. And then suddenly he's dead. And you think, wait, he hasn't actually done much else in the film at all.
But that's interesting because I was the other side of that. And it's probably now, as I think about it right now, it's probably because I love Alan Tudyk anyway. But it's more of like, Wash from the show. You're right. Because he doesn't do much in this. But I was going to say, I think Alan Tudyk is great in this film. But it's... I do think he's great in this film. But as I'm watching it, as I'm thinking about it now, it's probably because, you're right, I'm taking more from the TV show. Because I watched the TV show first. I was a big defender of the TV show. We had our friend of the show, Dave, who's recorded a couple of episodes with us. He was a Serenity first. He watched Serenity, enjoyed it. And I said, well, mate, you've got to watch the TV show. So I lent him my DVD and he came back and he loves it as well. So he watched it in reverse order. So you can watch it in reverse order. But it's interesting because you're saying like, Wash didn't do much. And he didn't do much. I mean, you mainly see Wash just sat in the pilot's chair. But in my mind, I can't separate him from Firefly.
Well, he's been sitting in the pilot ship for 12 hours as far as you're concerned.
Yeah.
Well, no, and just be clear, I was exactly the same because, again, when he died in the film, I was like, fuck, they killed Wash, what the fuck? But again, it's only now that I'm watching it again with that more critical eye, and I'm trying to remove the TV show completely and see it as just a movie in and of itself. And I was like, wait a minute, if I had never seen the TV show, it's like, why would I really give a shit? And it's weird because obviously Shepard gets relatively short shrift in this film, but the difference is that they have that emotional scene together. Like, I think I was trying to get to it earlier, where he's like he's obviously dying. He's like, you can't order me around. I'm not one of your crew. And you just see like Mal, like just breaking that moment. He's like, yes, you are. And I swear to God, like I am dead inside, generally speaking. If you ask my wife, I'm emotionally dead inside. I watched that scene again. And I was like, fucking hell, that got to me big time. Like, and again, so much of it is in the performance between the two of them. But when he says, yes, you are, I was like, oh my God, that fucking slays me. But then I watched the scene with Wash and there was nothing. There was
it's weird.
It's a shock, but no emotion.
It kind of takes something away from it as well, because this film, let's be clear, this film is set 8 months after the TV show. Okay. In the TV show, which spans a couple of months, they only just they meet 3 characters. So Zoe, Wash, Mal, Jane, Anara, and Keely. They're all on the ship anyway. They live on the ship. They take in then 3 passengers.
Yeah, River, Simon, and Shepard.
Well, actually, no, they take in Simon, Book, and an Undercover Alliance operative because Simon is River is cargo at that point. Nobody knows she's around. But what I'm trying to get at is it kind of takes the emotion away from it because there's not enough time, which is really weird. They give the emotion with Book, even though he's only known Book for about 9 months. And when they hint that they go back to Sanctuary where Book is with all these people, it's like they've been going there for years. That's what, if you haven't watched the TV show, that's the idea you're getting from there, that they keep going back to this shelter.
Mm-hmm.
But there's no, and I appreciate it's the fight or flight with Wash. Wash died, but they're being attacked by Reavers. There's no time to grieve. There was a little bit of time to grieve with Book. But
yeah, exactly. That's the difference, I think.
There's not enough backstory between Book but again, linking that to the TV show. But if you just watch the film, you fill in the blanks yourself, and maybe there are backstories if you haven't seen the TV show.
Yeah.
So
well, they do that.
I think it was a bit weird as a fan of the TV show, as somebody who's watched it before the film. It's a bit weird to give the emotional gravitas between them two and not between Wash and Mal. Do you know what I mean?
I think it is what you said, though. I think it's just a timing thing. I think in the moment, narratively, they've got the time in the story to have, and just be clear, it's not between the whole crew. Like, they don't have a big mourning moment on the crew. Really, all you see is that moment with Mal and Shepard. But the thing is, they're both so great in that sequence that it hits you like a ton of bricks, whether you know the character or not. Whereas, as you say, because of where it fits in the story, where Wash dies, it doesn't, they don't have the time to kind of go, my God. It's kind of like, the same with what happened with, again, I know it wasn't his film, but almost what happened with Scarlett Johansson in the Marvel films, where she died and they just didn't have the time or, to kind of really grieve or whatever. And you're like, well, she just kind of died. But this is a weird one because, as you say, that moment when they land and you think everything's fine, and then that Reaver missile or whatever it is shoots through his chest and just kills him dead. That really is, as big of a moment it is in the film, that is one of those specific moments where it really is for the fans. I know that seems weird because they're killing one of their favorite characters, but in the film I just don't think that has a massive impact if you've never seen the TV show. But like, as you say, even though he hasn't been in the film much, if you've, like you and I, we had already watched those how many episodes they were, and you grow to love his performance, his character, and then just out of the blue, bang, he's just dead. Like, you just like, what the fuck have they just done? And it's not one of those, do you think he survived? You're like, he's dead as fuck. And of course, it doesn't help if you're coming to it for the first time that Zoe is so closed off about it, because she's a soldier first, isn't she? Kind of thing. She doesn't burst into tears. She's just almost in shock. And they just kind of, like, her and Mal in particular, they have that ability because of their history to just go into battle mode. And that's what they know they have to do in that moment.
Do you know why they killed off Wash and Book?
Was it because they wouldn't sign on for a sequel?
They couldn't sign on for a sequel, so they couldn't make themselves available for any sequels. So they had to kill him off in case a sequel came along.
Well, the thing is, as much as, again, I like, I really like that character and stuff like that, and I love Shepard in particular, but I think a film like this, and again, I apologize that I keep, comparing to Marvel, but it's just in my head at the moment, is one of the issues with that film is that nobody ever really dies, and what you end up losing is that sense of threat and impact.
But that's what I wanted that's what I wanted to say anyway. He killed him off because they couldn't sign on for a sequel, but Joss Whedon already said, if I ever got a sequel, I'd find a way to bring them back. So it kind of takes...
that undermines it.
It sense. You said nobody really dies in the Marvel films. It kind of takes it away from how they died and the emotion that it gives when they died. Emotional, not with what... Like, Zoe saw him die. Zoe had to close herself off. But then if they do a sequel, he was going to find a way to bring him back anyway. Whether he brought him back as just memories or ghosts or something like that, you never know. But...
I mean, the thing is, we saying that they were going to come back,
which would take away any gravitas to the situation.
So, well, we never had to see that, so that gravitas and that impact still lasts. And again, we appreciate that very much is more for fans of the TV show, especially, as we say, with the Wash death, because, as I said, his relationship with Zoe, I think, is very much underplayed. Obviously, I think Anara gets short shrift, and Wash as a character in general. But again, I'm not going to go picking this film apart because I don't think this film benefits by being 2.5 hours long. I think 2 hours is right. I think they made nearly all the right choices. There was always going to be some collateral damage to make this film work fundamentally as a film first. And that is the collateral damage with those a bit of characterization, a bit of history. But as you say, fans of the show, people who are going to have the issue with that, were able to fill in the gaps naturally anyway.
We need to bring up Adam Baldwin as Jane as well, because we haven't really mentioned him.
Who is fucking good.
He is great in this. I mean, he was great in the TV show. I love Adam Baldwin. I think he was great. He did a TV show called Chuck just after this with Zachary Levi, who's Shazam at the moment. But Adam Baldwin is great as Jane, because he will literally just stab you in the back to move ahead. And you know that. You always have the feeling that as long as the money's right, he's going to be on your side. But as soon as that money changes, he's like the whole thing when he turns around is like, we're going to go on a shuttle ride. And then River just kicks the shit out of him again.
Yeah. But he's going to kill River.
Yeah.
Like, that's his plan. He's going to kill River. And as you say, like, I think, again, because I still think fundamentally the most important thing in the show is, by A Country Mile, is Mal Reynolds.
Yeah.
And again, I think Jane's character also helps you dictate the difference between Mal and someone who is just bad. And don't get me wrong, like, Jane walks a line himself because he is likable, but he's that step beyond where he really is a stone's throw away from becoming a legitimate bad guy. And I think the difference is he enjoys being a bad guy. And that is the fundamental difference between he and Mal. Because Mal, he can be a bad guy. I don't think he wants to be a bad guy. Whereas you just think, even if they were living in a perfect world, you think Mal would just be married, he'd have kids, and he'd just be a nice guy. In a perfect world, Jane would still be a fucking asshole. Yeah. That's the difference, I think.
Jane is the opposite, isn't he? Like I said, Mal needs to make the money to keep his home. We've already said about it being his home. He needs to keep his home alive. He needs to keep his family fed. Whereas Jane just wants money. So anything, as long as the number is right, he will keep moving forward. But
it is strange, though, because he's also has, as I said, like, the great thing about these characters, they're never quite as black and white as that, because I do fundamentally think that's where his head is. But I think he's grown to love the cast and the crew of the Serenity so much, and that he is able to kind of, like, he does love the people around him, but he's just more cold-hearted at a base level.
Because I mean, you get that little sense at the end of the film when the Reavers are attacking and they've set up their OK Corral. So
the barricade, kind of the last stand.
Yeah, the OK Corral. So Mal can go down and send the signal out. And he's using these people as cannon fodder, really. He's looking around and they're going, do you think we can survive this? He's going, well, I might. You're saying he loves them, but he's just looking at which people can like serve his purpose of helping him survive. That's all it is. It's all about him surviving.
Oh, yeah, fundamentally. And that is the difference. Like, I still think in his own way, he loves the people around him, again, in his own way.
In his own way, Hitler loves the people around him.
But Mal will risk everything for the people around him, whereas still at that fundamental level, Jane is like, oh, no, it's still me first. Make no mistake. As far as, anyone out there, you're probably the most important people in the universe to me. But make no mistake, the most important person in the universe is me.
No, I don't think.
That's what I still love about this, is that they have these gray areas with the characters where, again, it doesn't have to be that consistency. Jane can change in a moment. Like, when everything's going well, it's like, I want to look out for these guys. But then when a push comes to shove, Jane's like, I'm out for me and mine, and that's it. Not me and mine, just me. Sorry.
I always think Jane is just out for himself. I don't think there's a grey area with him. I think, like you said, as long as you're keeping him paid, then. But I would always be looking at Jane through like a third eye, like just keeping that eye on him, because at any point in time he is going to turn against us. I don't think there's any morality with Jane. I don't think there's any, but that's what's interesting.
I think there's begrudging morality.
I don't know what it is.
I really think there is.
Deep into something that's not there.
No, I really do believe that. I like the fact that I think Jane, as I said, I think in his own way does love the people on the ship to one extent or another, but that he can't overcome his overriding sense that it's him first. And like I said, like, it's not even close. It's how he, cares for the people on the ship in his own way. And I think, that maybe it is, I am overreading it, but I think each and every character on the ship is complex in their own way. But the fact of the matter is, one way or another,
but if Jane had his way, everyone would be out of an airlock and he'd be on the ship. He's already said it. He wants to be captain. He wants the ship. So
but I think, again, that comes from that kind of like the almost buffoonish thing where he just says it. I don't think he really wants to be captain, because I think it's one of those, like, in the moment he might want to be, but then I think if he was suddenly made captain, he'd be like, man, I don't want to deal with all this responsibility.
This is what I love as well. We're seeing two different traits from a character. Do you know what I mean? So you're getting the ambiguity of that character, the grey around him. Like, he's not just cookie cutter. He is not just straightforward. And I really love that. I mean, I 100% believe you're wrong, but I do appreciate your
That's absolutely. Yeah, well, I just think that one of the brilliance. I mean, the thing that drives the show, drives the film, is that characterization first and foremost. Although, make no mistake, it doesn't come at the cost of that big space battle, which I think is delivered in such an organic way. Like usually with most films, you always feel like you're building up towards the big space battle. In this film, it doesn't feel like it's coming. Like for the most part, you've got this mystery going on in the background. And I actually think it's a great twist to find out that, the Reavers have been accidentally created by the Alliance. But then, again, the fact that only Mal is thinking of this, like that idea that Mal is one step ahead of the game. And then you've got the kind of, that huge convoy of Alliance ships. And the way he flies through the cloud, and then has that kind of army of unknowing kind of Reaver ships behind it. And it's such a great sequence. And again, I don't think you necessarily see it coming. I think the brilliance of that is that you forget that this could potentially turn into a big space battle. But the movie at the end has its cake and eats it, because it adheres to tropes, but does it in such a sneaky way. Like, it has the big space battle at the end. It has the big hero versus the villain. It even has one of those terrible, and my wife actually brought it up years ago. We were watching, of all films, I'm not sure if you ever watched 2009 sci-fi horror, very forgettable movie, Pandorum.
Yeah.
But there was a sequence where she goes, I guarantee this guy's going to walk across a bridge right now with no handrails. I was like, oh yeah, he totally will. And he did almost immediately. And it's one of those great sci-fi tropes of, like, you think of it in Star Wars, that they have just these bridges, which are so precarious, of these huge drops, and there's just no handrails. I mean, in the final fight between him and Chiwetel Ejiofor, the operative, there's not even a bridge. They have to swing across on chains.
Yeah,
it's insane.
But he makes a bridge. He makes a bridge to go back then, which is quite funny.
But even the bridge going back doesn't have a fucking handrail.
So you said about the big space battle. I love the delivery from the operative in that. Like, he's on the bridge of a ship. He sees just Serenity come through the cloud, and it's just what he says is fantastic. You should have let me see her, Captain. We should have done this as men, not with fire. And then Serenity comes from the clouds. He's like, vessel in range, lock on. And you get that little smirk of bastards not even changing course. And then the Reavers come through, and he's like, target the Reavers, target everyone. Somebody fire! And he just goes into, oh shit. Like, look at what's coming up. And I love that change. Like, he's still smug. He's still a gentleman. He's like, oh, we should have done this as men. We should have, okay, actually, no, this is bad. This is fucking, just shoot somebody. Somebody shoot somebody. And
it has so much more impact because of how his character is for the rest of the film. It comes back to that idea that he's so unwavering, so unshakable, so cool and calculated. And it could only be Mal Reynolds who kind of sends him into panic mode, who flusters him. And as you say, like, in that moment, he's saying everything you expect of that character, everything where he's just like, oh my, well, if this is the way it's going to be. And then all of a sudden, like you say, that brief hint of panic in his eyes where he's like, what the fuck? It's like, how the hell has he done this kind of thing? And yeah, it just makes, but that, like, I would say that's one of the most important relationships actually in the film. They actually give them 3 scenes face to face, or one's over a video screen. But quite often between a good guy and a bad guy, they kind of, they're both doing their thing, and then they'll have the big fight at the end of the film. In this, they actually have 3 dialogue-heavy moments, and they're 3 of the most important sequences in the film, as you say, where initially it's them. You have the opening kind of gambit where they're both feeling each other out, and Mal Reynolds is trying to push him over the edge, and you see that he can't, and he remains calm.
Before you go on, that opening gambit as well is fantastic, where he's just talking to him calm and collected. He's like, you can't fluster me, Captain. You can't make me angry. And Anara in the background, please spend an hour with him. And then an hour into an hour into the film, then all of a sudden he has flustered him. He has pissed him off. It's so good. That is such a great little bit of foreshadowing that it's done so well.
Yeah. And it's brilliant because they both have their moment, because obviously they're both feeling each other out. But then the second sequence, it's not actually Mal flustering him. It's him flustering Mal, because again, it's that sequence just after Shepard's died. And it's, excuse me, it's Chiwetel Ejiofor, the operative, who pushes Mal over the edge. He suddenly gets all the emotion out of Mal, and again, it pushes him into angry, war Mal mode kind of thing. And it's only that last sequence when Mal's able
Sorry,
to
before you go
step
to the
back.
last sequence, look how he's done that. Look how he's pushed him over the edge. Like Mal pushed him over the edge by talking. All right, he shot him in the. Well,
Yeah,
like Mal never.
as well.
I don't think Mal ever thought that was actually going to kill him. But then the operative pushed him over the edge by destroying everything Mal knows. Everyone Mal knows. If your enemy goes to ground, leave no ground to go to. Like,
well, yeah. He's just kind of forced him into a corner, and he's just like, listen, he's in that moment. Again, it's that whole. Sorry,
it gives a take on those characters as well, though, that he will burn everything up. It's Peacemaker from Suicide Squad. I don't care how many people I have to kill for peace. I will kill as many women, children, men, women, children as I can for peace. And that's basically
it's that without the comedy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the great thing as well is that that sequence in particular, it's not just in and of itself. Like, so much of it is driven. Like, you got to remember that it's not just him versus the operative. It's basically their stand-ins for the Alliance versus the Independents. Like, you are talking about the man who believes wholeheartedly in the freedom of humans to do what they want, to be as stupid or as dangerous as they need to be. And then you've got this guy who believes so wholeheartedly in the Alliance. So you've got the operative versus Mal Reynolds, but in those moments, you've also got the Alliance versus the Independents. And he can feel it in a moment. It's not just, oh, I've got you cornered. We're going to do whatever it takes. He's thinking, my God, it's the fucking war all over again. That the Alliance do have the Independents cornered. They've got me cornered. And that's what pushes them over the edge. But eventually it is that individuality that ultimately wins out in that final sequence kind of thing, that willing to kind of, twist the facts, as it were, or go that extra mile. And the fact that you have those two sequences of them together, or again, I appreciate it's over the screen, but it makes that final fight between the two of them so much more impactful. And as I said, so much more brutal than I remember. But it's a film which distorts and twists all of the tropes you expect from the genre while somehow completely adhering to them. And again, it just goes to show how well written, how well acted this film is. And whether you're a fan of Firefly or not, I legitimately believe this remains one of the best sci-fi films of the last 20 years.
Absolutely. 100%. I love Mal's line at the end when he's made his way down to get to the broadcast station, because Mr. Universe has left that recording for him on the set one, saying, I've got another recording station, but it's a bit hard to get to. And when Mal goes down and sees it, you just see him go, hard to get to. Like, it's solid.
I mean, that's the thing. We could spend this whole podcast just quoting Mal Reynolds, as is the number of completely quotable lines he's got. But just to be clear, that there's one other issue I have with this film is Mr. Universe, but we'll get to that potentially in the love-hate section, which I was going to say.
So we've been going on for nearly an hour now, so we might want to move on.
Let's move on then.
So you got anything else, or shall I go on to my free loves?
Yeah, go for it. Go for it.
Yeah. Mal Reynolds, number one. I mean, there's no way around it. Mal Reynolds. I've always loved, and I always will love, the design of Serenity, the ship. I think it looks great. I absolutely love it. And
I like the fact that it looks a little bit shit.
But that's what I mean. But I love it because it is a piece of shit, but it's his piece of shit, and I think that's great. And I think it looks. I love it. I think it's great, and I love seeing it pop up in other sci-fi films at the moment. Now you just randomly see this Serenity in the background.
It's like kind of, as you say, geek to the max kind of thing. It is the most cult TV show possibly of all time. It's going to be in the conversation. So yeah.
And finally, the operative. Just that kind of character, that bad guy, the ideals, the beliefs, the way he goes around things. That is a guy that will do whatever it takes to support his ideals, and I think it's delivered so well by Chiwetel Ejiofor, honestly. So they're my three.
I mean, my three are almost exact same. Number one, Mal. Again, I'm not going to spend another 40 minutes talking about how much I love Nathan Fillion in this role and how great the writing is, but I think Mal Reynolds is understandably the heart and soul of this film. Two, the dialogue. And that goes across the board. And it's not just the fact that it's quippy, that it's catchy, the fact that we can sit around quoting so much of it, the fact that it helps it to work as a standalone film, that it also works as a follow-up to show. And again, also a bit of a reboot, as I mentioned. Again, a bit of a miracle.
I just remember one of my favorite lines from it when they've just got rid of River and Simon. and Keely's talking in the bar, and she's going, "It's been going on a year now. I've had nothing twixt my nevers that can run on batteries." And Mal turns around and goes, I can't hear that. And you just got Jane in the background being as sleazy as Jane is going, "I could stand to hear a little more.
I could stand to hear it more." I mean, I always, is it Keely or Kaylee?
Kaylee? Oh, I said Keely. It's Kaylee, isn't it?
I always thought it was Kaylee. I could be wrong, but either way, I always had a bit of a crush on her anyway. But so she could easily be on the list. But the third one, like you said, is so much. I don't want to just say the operative. I'm really going to say Chiwetel Ejiofor because, again, this was the first thing I saw him in, and it was one of those, I think, even though the film wasn't a massive hit, was a legitimate star turn, where you saw a guy in the role, and as much as I thought Nathan Fillion was going to be a massive star, I thought the same with Chiwetel Ejiofor, where I was like, this guy brings so much gravitas, so much weight, so much history to the character, and some of that, again, is done by the dialogue, but again, so much of it is by that performance. The fact that he can pull off, that he can be both charming and chilling in the same breath, you know? But yeah. So Mal, dialogue, and Chiwetel Ejiofor. How about hate? Oh, excuse me.
It was a bit, with a film that you love, it's always a bit rough to try and find things that you hate about a film, because hate is a strong word. But Mr. Universe, not a fan of Mr. Universe.
He's rubbing. Why is he dressed like that? He's dressed from another fucking film. He's dressed. It's like he's walked off the set of American Pie into this. It's insane.
He probably came.
I don't like Miss Universe.
He probably came from Numbers, his TV show, where he solves everything, solves crime with math.
I really didn't like Mr. Universe in this at all.
No. I really, really struggled to find, other than Mr. Universe, there was Fanti and Mingo. It wasn't a fan.
They're okay, I suppose. I mean, I've got Inara not getting screen time she deserved, and the fact that, you know, if you're watching this for the first time, you're just like, why is she so... like, what's going on? Why is she dressed like that? Yeah, I think it's a bit strange. But the big issue for me is the lack of the main theme. I appreciate it probably wouldn't work in the film, but I grew to love that theme tune from the TV show.
Take my land, take me away.
Love it. Like, it's, don't get me wrong, it's terrible, but it's also catchy as shit. So the lack of the main theme in the film, that was the closing credits would have been.
That was sung by the creator, Tim Minear, wasn't it? Or one of the creators, Tim Minear.
Yeah. But yeah, that's me forcing the issue a little bit, because I don't actually think that the main theme has any place in this movie whatsoever. But it did remind me that I do kind of secretly love the main theme of the TV show.
I had a fourth love. Because considering I only had two hates, can I have another love?
Yeah, go for it.
The Fruity Oaty bar.
Oh yeah. That was pretty awesome. Didn't they do like wasn't that one of the things like on the DVD? It was like a hidden Easter egg.
It's an Easter egg. If you go left or something on it, you get the full Fruity Oaty bar commercial. And in fact,
it was bonkers.
In fact, which we'll move on to in a sec, I have the full lyrics to that Oaty bar. So
awesome. Yeah. Well, before we actually go to facts, I mean, because the show is so beloved, or the film as well, and the characters in particular, there is talk of them doing basically a reboot for. Is it Disney?
We're gonna go into Legacy, we.
Well, I was just going to do, we were going to say, basically, if you're going to recast the show, because I think this is one of the trickier recastings of all time. Like, we're going on the basis that if they're doing a new Firefly or a new Serenity or whatever, and they're basically recasting everyone, who would you have in the major roles? Well, because this is a tricky one, I think.
You've got to look at it as well a bit objectively, because it's going to be a Disney Plus show. Mm-hmm. There's going to be no Inara being a courtson. For a start.
I think you can.
No, they're not going to do it. They've already said they're not going to do it. They're not going to hint to her being a courtesan.
But that's so fucking lame. Because, like, I appreciate, you know, and Mal gives her a hard time because he basically just keeps calling her a high-class whore, basically, doesn't he? But, like, dude, as soon as you start kind of chipping away at things, I'm like, you're taking the edge off the universe. Like, the whole point, and especially the Independence, is that they are living on the edge. That it, like, and again, fundamentally, it's a Western in space. And in case you hadn't noticed, what the Westerns have, they have prostitutes quite regularly. And they put a clever twist on it, as you say, by making her a courtesan. You know, she's not your traditional kind of, she's not just a space prostitute. She's so much more than that. And by removing the I'm already annoyed now, motherfuckers.
In the TV show, she is actually used to get to help Mal get more highbrow, legitimate clients. Like as you've already said, the high class hooker is used to get more legitimate clients, because their clients at the moment would be like Badger from the TV show.
Yeah.
But
no, yeah, it's an interesting one. But okay, so other than things dropping out, I mean, we'll go on the basis that they're basically playing the same characters when we do the recasting, I suppose. I think this all started because I always kind of had a bit of a crush on Kaylee, and immediately my wife said, well, if they were going to do a new version of this, surely they're going to have Anna Kendrick as Kaylee. And I was like, yeah, that's absolutely perfect. I think maybe because
you've already stolen my love for Nathan Fillion. Now you're stealing the fact that I think Anna Kendrick is one of the best women on the planet.
Oh, I love Anna Kendrick as well. So yeah. So I'll just go through my list because again, we can kind of get caught up in the weeds with this. So I've got Kaylee as Anna Kendrick. Mal Reynolds is a chick. I mean, obviously, you want to joke and say Tom Holland. A push, maybe Sebastian Stan, someone who can get that balance. I don't think there is a correct answer to this other than Nathan Fillion. But if I was going to recast, I think maybe Sebastian Stan might be able to do a job there. Summer Glau, or River, as it were. I've got Margaret Qualley from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and Death Stranding. If you ever played the video game, she has a very prominent role in that. I think she'd be really good in the role. The operative, again, tricky. I've got Lakeith Stanfield. It feels like he's got the same kind of intense energy where he could be charming and threatening. I'm not sure. I think for a lot of people, you'd know him as he's in Get Out. He's the guy who's been taken, spoiler alert for Get Out, he's the guy who's been kind of indoctrinated into the white part of the family. It'd probably
be better saying he was Daniel Craig's partner in Knives Out. He had a more prominent role in Knives Out.
Yeah. He's in that as well. Yeah, and again, that's probably more what I'm thinking of when I think of him taking on the operative role. Simon Tam, I've got Zachary Quinto because my wife said, oh, he's kind of like a human Spock, isn't he? I was like, yeah, he kind of is. Zachary Quinto will do. Mr. Universe, I've got Kunal Nair, just because we were both talking about how we just thought of Raj Koothrappali from The Big Bang Theory would be a good suit. Jane was a tricky one. At first, I joked that I might go with John Cena because I think he could get that balance between being strong and having the comedic side. But eventually landed on Alexander Skarsgård, who I thought might have the physicality and that kind of balance between being a bit of a dick, but also, again, quite charming. I'm going through the whole fucking list here. Wash. Fuck it. I've got Wash down as Vin Diesel because my wife said, oh, it's got to be Vin Diesel because he loves to drive. And she also said he could be a leaf on the wind. I don't know what that means, but I said I'd bring it up. Anara, I've got Mila Kunis. Zoe, I've got as Tony Cypress because I actually thought they might have been the same actress when I watched Yellow Jackets, which sounds slightly racist, but they do actually look really similar. And Shepard, I'm really pushing the boat out here. I mean, it'd be nice to get Denzel Washington or Morgan Freeman. I'm basically thinking somebody with a bit of gravitas, but I don't think we're getting either of those characters to play Shepard. But we can wish all the same.
So for me, Mal would be two. Mal would be Zachary Levi.
Mm-hmm.
Or
not a bad shout.
No. Or Anthony Mackie. Seeing what Anthony Mackie did with Falcon, but more he was Kovac Novik, I think his name was, from Altered Carbon. Anthony Mackie would be great. He's got the quips, he's got the one-liners. So I think Anthony Mackie would be great. For Jane, Joel Kinnaman.
It's not a bad shout.
Yeah.
Again, feels like he's in the same kind of ballpark as Alexander Skarsgård, certainly in terms of aesthetics, if nothing else.
Joel Kinnaman, because he'd be a bit imposing. He'd be a bit, or if not Jane, if not Joel Kinnaman, Scott Adkins.
That's not a bad shout either.
Scott Adkins, who probably famous. Well, anything to do with martial arts, he's the second. Right? He was in Doctor Strange as one of the warrior monks with. What the hell is his name?
Oh, it's Lashif.
Yeah, Lashif. Yeah.
Oh, what the hell is it? He's one of my favorite actors, the Danish actor. Oh my god, I'll get it in a minute. Jesus Christ,
Mads Mikkelsen.
How the fuck did I forget Mads Mikkelsen's name?
Mads Mikkelsen would be the operative.
Dare I say?
That's
a great shout.
Would be the operative.
That is a great shout.
I think he'd be great as that. Buck would be Bryan Cranston.
That's not bad.
I think Bryan Cranston would be great as Buck. I don't like you because I can't take Anna Kendrick away from Kaylee. So
no. There's no other answer to that question. Kaylee, if you're going to recast Kaylee, it has to be Anna Kendrick. Simple as.
Randomly, Wash would be Jack Black.
So not Vin Diesel.
Not Vin Diesel. No.
Vin Diesel. I mean, don't get me wrong. I would argue under normal circumstances that Jack Black's a slightly left field choice, but I don't think it's quite as left field as Vin Diesel. So I'll give you that.
But I'm trying to think. I can't really think of, because Zoe, as much as Zoe being Wash's husband, she was just the one who follows Mal's word to the letter, the one who can. So you really need a strong character to be Zoe, like somebody.
Well, jokes aside, that's why I actually picked Tony Cypress. Beyond the fact that they do like her and what's the name of the original Gina Torres, they do look very similar. There's no two ways about it. But they do have a similar energy, like that. You know, I'm not sure if you've seen Yellow Jackets, but the fact that she is fundamentally, she has a tough exterior, but there is that emotion under the surface. So I do legitimately think she would be a great replacement in the role, to be honest.
All right, I'll go with Tony Cypress. Who have I missed out now?
Inara?
Yeah, Inara, see. Mila Kunis seems right for Inara, although Christina Ricci for Inara. I think she's in that right. Especially I know I saw her on some of the promos for Yellow Jackets, but seeing her pop up every now and then, I think Christina Ricci would be really good as Inara.
I'm just not sure if I buy her as a high-class prostitute.
It's fine because they're not doing her as a high-class prostitute, so it can be.
Yeah, but in my version, she's still a high-class prostitute.
You keep your version. In my version, it's Christina Ricci, and she's not a high-class prostitute. Because
I think people want to see the high-class prostitute version with her being played by Mila Kunis. That's just what I'm saying, anyway.
You know what? Right? Fuck you, then. Mal Reynolds is now being played by either Tom Holland or Mark Wahlberg.
Oh my God! Imagine if it was one of those. Jesus Christ!
It'd kill me. I already said book for Bryan Cranston, so I don't think
The only other one is Mr. Universe, but who gives a shit? Because I don't.
Well, Mr. Universe wasn't even in the TV show. If we're redoing a TV show, technically.
Oh yeah. Well, I don't know if we're doing the who gives a shit? He's terrible anyway. So So I think we've made a pretty good stab at providing them with options. Needless to say, for some of the casting there. But yeah, facts. Again, there's so many facts for us to have to pick our battles. Yeah. Sorry, excuse me. Excuse. I got the black lung pop.
So, according to Nathan Fillion, he personally supplied the blueprints used to build the ship set in the film, after being informed at a production meeting that the originals had been lost. He was also able to do so because, being so excited about being in the original show, he had taken photos of all the pre-production materials he had seen, including the blueprints.
He truly is a geek, isn't he? He truly is one of us.
They destroyed it all, didn't they? After the show, they destroyed it all, but they lost the blueprints and everything, and he'd taken pictures of everything.
What a hero. What a hero.
According to the director commentary, Mal's line, "faster would be better," was ad-libbed by Nathan Fillion when Joss Whedon told him to say something Mal would say. I do like that line. Faster would be better.
That's good.
During Mal's conversation with Inara over the way, 4 of Mal's scars are visible. They're all wounds from the Fireflies have said. The one on his chest was inflicted by Crow in the train job. The one near his diaphragm is from a gunshot wound inflicted during out of gas. The one in his side is from his duel with Atherton Wing and Shindig. The one in his left shoulder is from the bullet graze in the pilot, which I thought was a really good nod to fans of the show. This, like, he's still carrying those scars.
Oh, yeah. It's unnecessary, but it is just a cool nod for those.
But the fact of the matter is, it's set 8 months after. Those scars look years old.
They do a little bit, yeah. Still, A for effort, all the same.
The apparently seamless long single take during the film's opening titles actually does contain one cut, albeit an invisible one. There's a quick pan as Mal and Simon descend the stairwell into the lower decks, which contains a CGI wipe. That seamlessly blends the shots together. This was needed since the actors are actually walking onto another set at this point.
Needs must, I suppose.
Morena Baccarin, who played Inara, provides the voice for the security terminal in the records room. The main inspiration for the Fruity Yoti bar commercial came from the Simpsons episode in Marge We Trust, in which Homer Simpson appears in a bizarre Japanese commercial for Mr. Sparkle. The commercial went through several revisions. With each pass, Joss Whedon would simply tell the animators to make it stranger.
I love the fact that it's based on the Mr. Sparkle. I literally bought my wife a Mr. Sparkle t-shirt not too long ago. You are Mr. Sparkler! I mean, that was racist as fuck, but who gives a shit?
Mal was a sergeant during the Revolution, but listed as captain when his history file comes up on the screen. The lyrics of the Fruity Yoti bar commercial song goes, Fruity oaty bars make a man out of a mouse. Fruity oaty bars make you bust out of your blouse. Eat them all the time. They will blow your mind. I feel so ashamed I haven't eaten fruity oaty bars. Fruity oaty bars. Fruity oaty bars.
Classic.
Yeah.
It's essential that we got all the lyrics to that. I mean, I feel better knowing them. That's for sure.
At around 29 minutes, the actors in the docking station scene wear the army of 8 uniforms from Kevin Costner's apocalyptic film, The Postman.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Any nod to The Postman is unwise as far as I'm concerned. That film is dog shit.
And it's long.
Oh, it's super long. Like everyone goes on about, obviously the high profile one was Waterworld. Waterworld's a better movie than The Postman. Make no mistake. Any others?
Yeah. Sorry, I'm just because I've already.
Yeah.
I don't want to reiterate ones I've already said.
Oh, so yeah. Sorry, noise. Just wondering if I should move on to Legacy.
The Reaver ship that is destroyed by the gun mounted on Serenity is the Betty from Alien Resurrection. Your favorite Alien film?
Another terrible connection between two films. As much as I love Serenity, I'm not a massive fan of Alien Resurrection.
And randomly,
the brownest film of all time.
Randomly, body count 74 people died in this film.
That's quite a lot, actually.
Yeah, I was a bit.
Yeah, they don't mess around in this film. Like when people get killed, they get killed, and when they don't get killed, they get their neck broken. So that's pretty fucking nasty as well.
Can you break somebody's neck by moving their arms up, though? I never thought it was his neck.
I got the impression that by pushing his arms up, he was pushing his neck down with his body weight. I mean,
I got the impression
you heard the crack. It was messy.
I got the impression he was just dislocating his shoulders, incapacitating him.
That's not good. I mean, you hear the crack, the fact that he can't move afterwards, he can't really breathe. I don't think he's broke his shoulders. I mean, I have to go on the assumption he's broke his neck. Yeah, and in fairness, he's also collapsed his windpipe to a certain extent.
Yeah, but in all fairness, 2 days later, he's talking to Mal on the ship.
Yeah, but it's 2572 or whatever the hell it is. Might be even later kind of thing.
So like
we'll put that down to
like last week.
Whatever you say about
the cure for a crossbow bolt, they have the cure for a broken neck. Is that
yeah. But I think you can totally buy into that in 500-600 years in the future, especially on the Alliance side. The fact that he's an operative, that they would have the technology to completely repair a broken spine. I'm like, I totally bought into that. Right. Didn't question it.
What are you, one of the doctors from the Bionic Man? We have the technology. We can.
I don't think it's a massive jump to say that 600 years in the future, that if you're like the top of the top and you go back to the Alliance, that they could break. That was I know what you mean. Like usually think, oh, he's broke his back. Like, oh my God, that's the end of him. But the fact that he just walked back, I'm like, yeah, it's like 600-700 years in the future.
I don't know. Once again, I appreciate your view, but you're 100% wrong.
You're going for that. Fair enough.
That's me. I'm done.
Cool. In terms of legacy, obviously this has got a really bizarre legacy. I mean, the movie itself is part of the legacy, I suppose, considering what happened before with the TV show. We've already mentioned the fact that there's probably going to be a reboot. How that's going to work out, God knows. The fact that this is like maybe the most cult TV show movie of all time. Like I think it's in the conversation for sure. We're talking 17 years since the film and 19 years since the TV show. Is that correct?
Will be 20 years this year.
20 years.
Yeah.
And, by people who love the show, I mean, it's as beloved now as it ever was, arguably. I think it's also a great advert, and was at the time, for sci-fi on a budget. You've got to remember, this is obviously before Netflix, before Amazon. The idea of doing a big budget sci-fi movie for I think that the budget was like 30 million, was largely unheard of. And I wouldn't be surprised if this kind of encourage people, you think of something like District 9, which was done on a similar budget, obviously turned into a much bigger hit. But it proved without question that you could do big budget sci-fi in 2005 on a relatively small budget. And even now, there's like one or two sequences which have aged slightly, certainly at the start of the film. But for the most part, this film still looks really good. When you're talking about a low-budget sci-fi film from 2005, the effects totally hold up.
You're saying on a budget now. What they've done with the likes of The Expanse, you could, which again is a great sci-fi show, but you could totally deliver with a new Firefly on the same kind of budget as The Expanse.
100%. It's a lot easier now with like the improvements to special effects. You can have a relatively limited special effects budget, but as is the kind of progress in computer generated effects, they can still look amazing. I think this was one of the first which proved that you could do it on a limited budget back then. I think if you go back and look at a TV show from 2005, which was largely CG based, it probably looks pretty rough by comparison. But yeah, I mean, there's no escaping it. Part of the legacy is now intertwined with the man that Joss Whedon appears to be. But again, we're going to separate the film and the show from him as much as we can. The other thing, and this has nothing to do with the film, I just have to bring her up. Saffron, Christina Hendricks as Saffron in the TV show, might be the sexiest woman I have ever seen on screen. Like that is one of the things I always remember. Like I went back and saw that clip. I was like, she is outrageously beautiful. Like it's like embarrassingly hot. I was looking at this, I was like, I don't think I've ever seen a more beautiful woman on screen than Saffron in Firefly. So yeah, nothing to do with the film. I just wanted to mention how beautiful that not Anna Kendrick, Jesus Christ, Christina Hendricks is a Saffron in the TV show.
As part of Legacy, I thought I'd get out of my display case my fake Lego Mal Reynolds.
Oh, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
No, you're certainly not getting a real Lego Mal. Well, I don't know, actually, nowadays. Like, Lego go pretty deep, don't they, in terms of, like, you know, deep cuts. Like, you know, I've got Tron Legacy Lego, for heaven's sake. Why wouldn't they have Firefly Lego?
I might have
Where the hell did you get that from?
Amazon of all places. It's there is a Lego. There's a fake Lego company. I got a couple of Hellboy figures as well for me. Oh, I got to take a picture and put it on social media. But it's,
it's actually pretty cool.
It's little Mal Reynolds with his brown coat on. I thought that's really good.
That is pretty awesome. That is pretty awesome. So yeah, the other element of the legacy is fake Lego. So you know you've done well when there's fake Lego out there. You know.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty much it for legacy. Soundtrack, I mean, we've already mentioned it, that, you know, and we're talking here more score than anything else by David Newman. As I said, the great thing about it is that it does do a lot of the tonal heavy lifting. You know, I mean, this is a guy, make no mistake, you know, he hasn't been pulled out of nowhere. Like, David Newman's done 100 movies, many of which you'll know. I won't list them now. But while, you know, as much as I want to celebrate his work on the film, though, there's still a part of me which laments the loss of the main theme from Firefly. I just can't escape it. But I do think that tonally, as I said, a lot of the work is done by that fantastic score by David Newman. But yeah, I guess the last thing we usually have a chat about is the video game. Now, there wasn't a video game for the TV show or the movie, which doesn't come as a massive shock. But I think this is actually one of the easier ones to actually, you know, if you're going to do a modern day Serenity video game, and that'd be the best way to bring back the original cast, you could almost legitimately reskin Eidos Montreal's recent Guardians of the Galaxy game. Yeah. Like if you took that game, reskinned it with the cast of Serenity, it would 100% work. You know, let's be clear, Serenity is not a million miles away from Guardians of the Galaxy. I mean, you could go for, if you wanted to go big budget, you could arguably say, okay, you could do like a Mass Effect style Serenity. But to my mind, in terms of certainly getting the best out of like the cast, it's like, just do Eidos's Guardians of the Galaxy just with Serenity. I think that would totally work.
Well, it's definitely, I mean, absolutely, because you want half like the space travel. And let's be fair, I mean, Firefly is not a fighting ship. Like Serenity is not a fighting ship. It's just something that's used to travel in. So you're going to get more of the slightly westernish thing where you're on a lot of the ground. So you could kind of do it like a Red Dead set on different planets. You could do
it like a Red Dead.
Yeah.
Like,
you got like Red Dead where you're traveling, instead of traveling to different homesteads, you're traveling to different planets.
Yeah. Oh, you could absolutely do Red Dead, but just with more space travel. 100%.
Red Dead Serenity, I'd call it.
Oh, that would be a fantastic spin-off. Never happening, but it'd be fantastic all the same. I mean, they did fucking zombies. Why? Oh, no, they're not doing it. They're not.
Don't get your hopes up. It's not happening.
Yeah. So that just takes us to recommendations and reviews.
Oh my god, do we have to
go
this? Spoilers, it's a 5-star, and I'd recommend it to anyone I can get my hands on.
Yeah, and that is like the review won't come as a surprise. The fact that we're both going to give this a 5-star review, and again, I've really tried to rewatch this as somebody not as a fan of Firefly, and I still think this is a 5-star sci-fi movie, 100%. I think it totally holds up. And again, the fact that we can recommend it to anyone, I think, is almost a miracle. Yeah. Like, you know, I'm not saying, oh, dude, you should totally watch Firefly. I say to people, it's like, don't worry about Firefly. Like, because realistically, it's a tough sell to say, oh, watch this unfinished TV show from 2002. Totally tough sell. As much as I would love people to watch it, it's a tough sell. I'm like, dude, just watch Serenity.
Yeah.
It's 2 hours. And if you love it, you can go back and watch the TV show. But for anyone with a passing interest in cinema, I have told so many people, and it does seem like a crime when I say don't watch the TV show, but I'm like, get your foot in the door. Just watch the film. It totally holds up. You don't have to worry about aging TV effects, any of that nonsense. It works standalone. It works if you're a fan of the film, a fan of the TV show. So yeah, I totally recommend it to pretty much anyone that listens to me.
Totally agree. There's not much more I can say. I mean, yeah, it's 5-star, and anyone I could get my hands on, please go and watch Serenity. I think it's fantastic.
I might just shout it out the window after this podcast thing. So yeah. So that just leaves us with what we're going to cover next week. So this week, a big part of the reason that we covered 2005 Serenity, I'm sure you've noticed, is a much more modern film by our standards, despite the fact that it's depressingly 17 fucking years old, is it's my birthday next week. So for mine, I'm actually going to pick The Phantom Menace, which might seem like an odd choice, but I think there's an interesting conversation about its place in cinema history, and certainly given the recent Star Wars TV shows Boba Fett and The Mandalorian, you can see them leaning into the prequel trilogy a lot more. And I think it's very interesting to go back and revisit it now, because you've got to remember a lot of the kids who grew up watching Phantom Menace are in their late 20s now.
Yeah.
They didn't watch it the same way we watched it. I mean, even though we didn't see the original trilogy when we were growing, 82, Return of the Jedi came out in 82. That was the year I was born. I still very much grew up with the original trilogy. So by the time I was watching Phantom Menace, I was 17. I had all these expectations. You've got to remember, a lot of people who are grown-ups now, they watched it as like 5-6-year-olds. They probably fucking love Jar Jar Binks. So I just thought it'd be an interesting one to go back and revisit. And I'm going to apologize to Rob now, because he's not a big Star Wars fan. And I suspect he might not be a huge fan of Phantom Menace. But we will get to that next week. So yes, next week,
I will say,
a bit of an odd choice.
One thing I forgot to say during our introduction was thank you to everyone for listening, because this is our anniversary episode as well. We've been doing this podcast for a year now. So,
and I think it's amazing that it is almost perfectly a year. The fact that I think we've missed 1 week. And that was over Christmas.
Yeah.
Where we took 1 week off. So other than that 1 week over Christmas, we've been consistent. We've released a podcast every single week, but I think that was actually made up for by the Zack Snyder bonus podcast.
We released.
So I think it might be perfectly 1 year to the day since we recorded the first episode, which is absolutely insane.
So if
nothing else, we've been fucking consistent, dude.
We released this on my birthday on March the 2nd, and we're doing it again this year. It'll be released just before my birthday. So we're anniversary. So yeah, thank you for everyone for listening. Thank you for sticking with us.
Nothing if not consistent, but yeah, hopefully we can get another year out of it at the very.
Thank you for sticking with us. Thank you for dealing with just two people just yelling about the 80s films that they loved, and the 90s films, and now the 2000s.
2005 film.
Yeah, and what I will say, I'm not going to go into Star Wars. We'll save that for next week. But I am looking forward to.
As I said, I know, let's make no mistake, this isn't going to be a 5-star Serenity number, but I think there's a really interesting conversation to be had about Phantom Menace. But perhaps you disagree. Needless to say, we'll find out next week. So yes, please join us next week for our second birthday special, Star Wars: The Phantom Menace episode. Oh my God, I don't even want to say the whole title. Yeah, join us for that. Catch you later, guys. Cheers.
Cheers. Bye now.
Oh yeah, and before I forget, because I always forget, here's Rob telling you where you can actually find us.
Yeah, so we're currently on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter under Hey You Guys 80s, or at Hey You Guys 80s. And we're also on email at heyyouguys80s@gmail.com. Please feel free to drop us any emails, any recommendations, or any reviews you have. But whilst we're on about that, wherever you get your podcasts, please also smash the subscribe button. Yes, I said smash.
It's fine. Don't worry about it. It's fine.
Leave us a review and leave us some 5-star ratings as well. But make sure they're 5-star ratings.
Yeah. We're not interested in 1 star. 5-star. If it's not going to be 5-star, don't go smashing anything. Just leave your opinion to yourself. 5-star ratings only. But yeah, if you could do that, we'd really appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. See you next week.